Here you will see the true line of Christ continue to crush atheistic claims. You are about to see these two that go by the godless engineer and one that is a representative of the so-called deconstruction zone named John and Justin truly show themselves to be completely ignorant when it comes to this subject matter, let alone obnoxiously childish, and ultimately, before we go through and completely tear apart what they have misconstrued and have no understanding of whatsoever, I will remind them, both of them being, quote, fathers, that their children will one day be looking into what it was their parents were doing and come across just how stupid they have made themselves look, daring to conduct themselves as they have here, once more, having no grasp on what they are talking about whatsoever, as you are about to see now. We will begin with not only their heathenistic conduct, but their claims, and then afterwards, we are going to actually go through the text carefully and thoroughly, and then see if what they are claiming is true, or if ultimately they were just two really dumb idiots that just came on here in utter brute ignorance, daring to be against the truth of God. Now, these clips may seem sporadic just so you can get the feel of their behavior and the way that they have tried to portray these scriptures. And after that, once again, we are going to thoroughly go through the scriptures that they have in question here and see if there's any truth to their words whatsoever.
Let's circumvent this. Let's circumvent this a little bit. Let me ask you this, Anthony. Can a 12-year-old child consent to a sexual relationship? Let's relay this back to your particular God, okay? Your particular God, especially in Numbers 31, has the Israelites going in, and wiping out an entire civilization with the exception of the prepubescent young virgin girls, and forcing those young virgin girls into marriages to Israelite men, which God definitely puts his fucking seal on later on in Numbers 25 through like 30 or something like that, where he specifically says 1 out of every 500 little girls you are to sacrifice as a burnt offering to me, for one. For two, the rest of them you're to divvy up amongst the Israelites, equally applying them to the warring men and then the non-warring men of the civilization. So you have God specifically saying, hey, take these little girls. And as we know from, at least I've been reading Dr. Jennifer Bird's Marriage in the Bible, what the texts say, the way that you get married at this time is by having sex with the woman. And I say woman loosely here because these are children. So these Israelite men were having sex with 12-year-old children in order to marry them after those same men have utterly destroyed their entire people group. How is this okay?
Well, I never said it's okay. And
God
honestly,
does. And if you adhere to Yahweh,
no. Well,
yeah, Numbers 31:18
this
refers to them as hataf. That's Hebrew for children, little children. The same word is used to refer to infants
Sure. If you want to take a very naturalistic and Yahweh or non-religious view of the Hebrew Bible, sure, this is a bunch of asshole men that were writing down asshole things, that were telling other asshole men that it's okay to have sex with 12-year-old children. Sure, you could take that route. True. But if you're, but I mean, if you're taking the route that Yahweh is real and that the Israelites are the chosen people of Yahweh. Sorry, but the baby you're talking about, the Israelites wanted to fuck. I'm just saying.
No. Yeah. All right. But
okay. So this is something that's really good. Hold on. This is something that's really good because I feel like what you're saying is that, well, I would never fuck a child. So therefore, I don't think my God would ever condone fucking a child. So therefore, they didn't do that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, when
I'm
Jesus
just being
says
very
anyone
direct
who
about it. Like I don't see it. What? I don't see it as a bad thing. Being direct about what we're talking about. We're talking about
you could use a little bit cleaner language. Yeah, you could use cleaner language, but
would
it's
that
your
make it
show.
better
You do
for
what you want.
Would that make it more palatable?
You do. It's your show. You do what you want. I'm just. That's my opinion.
How would you like me? How would you like for me to refer to fucking children?
Do it however you want. You can do it. You can say it however you like.
You seem to have a very specific. You seem to have a very specific way you want me to refer to fucking children. How would you like me to refer to fucking children that makes it more palatable for you?
Now, once more, before we continue, that when I speak about how brute the behavior of these two people here in the moment, I'm not just trying to shine a light on solely that, as if like to compensate for what they're saying. Because ultimately, you're about to see that they have no idea and are very much ignorant as to what they are trying to talk about.
God definitely puts his fucking seal on later on in Numbers 25 through like 30 or something like that, where he specifically says 1 out of every 500 little girls you are to sacrifice as a burnt offering to me.
Now I invite anybody to take a look at Numbers 25 through 31 and see if it says anything whatsoever about taking 1 out of 500 little girls and offer them as burnt offerings. Of course, the speed of this example here is obviously for example's sake, so of course pull it up for yourself, or if you'd rather just try to pause through the information here, through the scriptures here, of course you're welcome to do so. And once more, to John and Justin and any like them who dare try to proclaim things of our history, you better make sure you actually know what you're talking about, as once more, it is your children who will be seeing how literally stupid you kids have made yourselves look here.
If you adhere to Yahweh.
No. Well,
yeah, Numbers 31:18 refers to them as hataf. That's Hebrew for children, little children. The same word is used to refer to infants.
This same word is used to refer to clutch, to kidnap, to seize, or take away. Through the lens of this corrected context, going through Numbers 31, you will then see that this is referring to those women that were permitted to be taken away, the ones that were not a part of those responsible for luring the Israelites into idolatry. Now here you see the actual letters of the word side by side to see that this interpretation truly is legitimate. And to the children of these two here, or any listening to me in the moment, read through everything to its completion, as these boys here should have had a hint that the end of the chapter refers to these captive as women. Not only that, but in verse 18 itself, as you look through the Hebrew translations, you will see that it once more refers to women, as you are seeing here. Furthermore, even with the interpretation being read as young or children, of course, once more, you still could not get past the following word being women, and let alone in verse 31 referring once more to women. And to solidify this all the more, even going by the interpretation of young or even children, this still would be elders such as Moses and Eleazar, making sure to draw distinction between those that lured the Israelites into the idolatry of that day and those of a generation that did not, as you see in this example of one of Solomon's sons.
Nonetheless, had Rechavim at the very beginning caught and understood the situation properly and followed the advice of the elders who told him to lower the burden on the people, to put down the taxation, that might have saved the situation and saved the splitting of the kingdoms. But he didn't. He listened to the advice of the youngsters, it says. Who are the youngsters? Those of his age, from his class. His class are 41-year-olders. They're called Yiladim, children. He followed the advice of the children, of those of his friends who were 41 years old like he. And instead of making lowering the taxes, he said he's going to make it even more than before, trying to prove his strength. But what happened was that just the situation exploded altogether, and by miracle, his life was saved.
And as you just saw here, elders referring to 41-year-olds as children, Yiladim, distinguishing them by their generations. Again, absolutely nothing close to what these two little punks have been on here carrying on about in pure ignorance. Now we will move on to one of these idiots who for certain is a coward, who ran from the last sharing I made, completely crushing his claims there as well, and upon me writing a message to him, letting him know that this was done, once more, very cowardly, he decided to try to block me, of course, ever so bravely. So now we will listen to this pretender now try to extend this claim to the Talmud.
No, didn't believe that to be the case. Have you read what the Talmud states about intercourse with children?
I have not read the Talmud.
I highly recommend it. There's a section in the Talmud. You can find it in Ketuvot 11, and you can also find it reiterated in Mishnah Niddah 5:4. It says, a girl who is 3 years and 1 day old, whose father arranged her betrothal, is betrothed through intercourse. And of course, if you read the Talmud, their justification for this type of behavior, it comes directly from Numbers chapter 31.
Now once more, this one speaks without having any understanding or context at all, if he is not just straight out lying, being as that he has before claimed to be an expert in the Bible, and yet he just heard the idiot speaking with him state that in Numbers it says that every 1 out of 500 little girls shall be offered as burnt sacrifices. And he just sat right there and listened to it without a single word. Again, either a liar or just ignorance on his end. Either way, nobody fit to be trying to weigh in on our history. As when you read what is written in the Talmud in context, it is speaking specifically with regards to her dowry, protecting what would ultimately equate to her estate. Furthermore, not only does the Talmud clearly state that a man may marry off his daughter when she is a young woman, again, woman, but furthermore, you will see holdings that those that, quote, play with little girls delay the coming of the Messiah, which ultimately, of course, we see, here I am. Further, you will see it held that a man should not marry a minor who is not fit to give birth.
It literally is what he meant. It's literally what the text says. Like Justin read off the literal Hebrew of it. Like, I don't know Hebrew. I would say that I'm translation, like I can translate it properly, but like he's been to seminary, right? Like he's got degrees in this shit. I don't.
Now, as we saw earlier, this, quote, godless engineer really can't translate anything and needs to recheck what it is that he is talking about very quickly. And when it comes to Justin, who claims that he's an expert when he thinks it benefits him, and claims that he's never stated that he's an expert, while he's been recorded live on air stating that he claims himself to be an expert, like an idiot, he also needs to recheck himself and his work. And to their children, when they come upon this, of course, remember the 5th commandment is indeed to honor our parents. And of course, even though Justin is stating things in different, quote, lives, like, I would never want my children to praise me, etc., which of course, obviously he would absolutely hate it if his children grew up to resent him, to rebel against any of his advice or any of his wishes. However, clearly, unless these two find the strength within them to not be little cowards and come forward and acknowledge their mistakes here, literally, then those very children should indeed, of course, still have to keep clear when it comes to reality and make sure they do not walk in the ways of these, quote, fathers, such as held in Ezekiel. Now we will clarify a few more things that stood out of the utter nonsense that they spent their time spewing, again, only to look like fools, while at the same time thinking themselves at some height.
Work for Laban and purchases. I don't know how much I have to actually emphasize this. He purchases. Like, you go to Best Buy and you buy a fucking laptop. He purchases women in the same way with his labor. Right?
Now truly, it is no lack of grace on my part to call things as they are, as now, truly, this kid is just a complete idiot. So we're going to go through this again very thoroughly and see if we can apply some of our common sense to this here, being as that I'm speaking about fathers and all. Now, after Jacob had stayed with him, Laban, for a whole month, Laban then said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you serve me for nothing?" Now, some of you have relatives that after a few days, let alone a whole month, you would be looking for them to reward you with something, to pay you for staying there, let alone someone be so impressed by your efforts that they are looking to reward you. The fact that he was looking to get a feel for the type of person that Jacob truly was, being through indeed as well his work ethic, amongst all the more that could have taken place second by second as they are living their lives. And all the more shows, being a true father, Laban was also thinking about the future of his daughters and them being with someone that he trusts with them, as made evident in verse 19, where Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." Now we will address a few more of these very simplistic claims by these, quote, skeptics.
The God of the Bible doesn't know how female anatomy works, yet
All right,
somehow he
explain that.
created them. Yeah. Deuteronomy 22
Explain
gives
how-
a test. Want me to tell you? Yeah, Deuteronomy 22 provides a test for knowing if a woman is a virgin. I'll read it to you real quick. It says, suppose a man marries a woman, but after going into her, he dislikes her and makes up charges against her, slandering her by saying, I married this woman, but when I lay with her, I did not find evidence of her virginity. So when he lays with the woman, when they consummate the marriage, he's looking for evidence. Evidence is going to be pretty obviously bleeding, but we'll keep reading. It says, the father of the young woman and her mother shall then submit the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate. The father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. And now he's made up charges against her, saying that I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity, but here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. Then they will spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. So the evidence of the young woman's virginity is whether or not she bled on a cloth when they consummated the marriage. And then there's punishments for whoever was lying.
Before we begin, take notice on how these pretenders here like to try to throw out their own twist of interpretation, which ultimately has very little to nothing to do with the actual text itself. We had one of these idiots going on and on about having sex with, quote, 12-year-olds, and we saw nothing about a 12-year-old in the text that we read whatsoever. And now you have this idiot here talking about the God of the Bible doesn't know how the female anatomy works. Which now we're going to go through this text thoroughly. Now remember, these are laws that are literally being recited and taught to these angels in the desert. Ultimately, this is indeed for protection of a woman to be wed, as this is read out as a warning to men and also, of course, women as well. Now, we don't have to go too far into the text before some key words begin to stick out. If a man takes a wife and after sleeping with her, dislikes her and slanders her and gives her a bad name. Now, if this was solely within the scope of there is a man who is found that a woman is not a virgin, then it would not matter if he liked her or not. It would not be considered slandering her if it was just solely the scope that he found this to be as he found it to be. However, taking the details that we have been given here into light, once more, this is being read out as a warning to the males that if you take a wife and you dislike her and slander her, then there can be repercussions to that. Of course, raising the awareness of being all the more thoughtful and careful when it comes to such a decision, let alone the such details such as if he dislikes her and slanders her, of course, clearly shows that there is suspicion raised amongst these elders in regards to, of course, figuring out what exactly is going on here. Now next, this child, Justin, goes on to try to hammer home to emphasize that the test here is to see if she's a virgin and bled due to the hymen breaking. There is also the fact that she could have been on a menstrual cycle at some point earlier, which her parents, knowing she was about to get married, held on to proof of, showing not only that she was not impregnated, let alone indeed a virgin. It was just not solely that her parents had to sit by the door while husband and wife got together. Again, speaking about John and Justin, as well as a whole lot of you so-called skeptics. These kids here and their interpretations aimed at trying to twist and make something look primitive or stupid only really has served to show just how primitive and stupid these modern day heathens truly are. And if, of course, any of these atheists wish to come and try to stick up for these skeptics, which I am picking on, as this is like Though the diet of Genesis 129 is indeed upheld here, this is like shooting fish in a bucket. You simpletons are no match for the king, literally. Now I will be looking to contact this quote godless engineer and let him know of this sharing. I would do so when it comes to Justin, but it looks like he will have to come about it another way, being as once more, like a little coward, he decided to try to block me, like a punk, ultimately. And by the way, that very word coward, he who definitely would never say such a thing in person, casted the first stone in trying to call me such a thing when I let him know of the last video titled Destruction of the Deconstruction Zone, which is what he decided to call his channels. Ultimately, I suppose I should enjoy these moments in which these skeptics still think they can say what it is that they are, as the future, when these children look back upon this, you kids are gonna look like straight up idiots. And by then, these revelations that are coming to pass will be so known that it will seem almost unfair, as it ultimately is, that you kids actually thought you could go against the very truth of God itself, ultimately. And I will have to remind them, just to keep us present in the moment, to the utmost of our God-given ability. I will have to remind them on how you were bogged down by the experiences that you may have had in the moment, the quote bills that you were paying, the quote issues you've had in day-to-day lives, that again, you were just hoping that ultimately God would just, in a figure of speech, snap its fingers and make it go away, because of course you wanted to be the center of the universe or whatever reasons you may have in the moment. And when you weren't just hit with a spark of enlightenment, you reacted like the children that you are. Ultimately, once more, of course, for whatever reasons you all ultimately had, or feel you didn't have, to quote, believe when you didn't know. However, all is and has been for a reason, by the grace of God. Tried to call out the king.